choosing your cut of meat. Okay, what you want to choose is something with marbling. Or what is marbling? Marbling looks like this. Where this is a chuck, for example. Marbling is the fat that's in between the muscles. Okay, and it looks like a marble, like this marble top. Here. See, it's a stone top. Okay, simulated marble. Okay, but that's what you want. You want this marbling. Okay, uh, you don't want where there's hardly any fat in it. Okay, and like this is a very lean. This would be very tough. The reason is, here's the reason. Simplified. Okay, muscle fibers. This represents the muscle fibers that we have in our own muscles. Animals have muscles too. Okay, and that's the red part. Okay, and they're straight fibers. They're strong enough to hold, not only hold up the animal, but allow the animal to run and even pick up heavy weights, including us, where we can pick up heavy weights because of the strong muscle fiber. Because it's strong muscle fiber, it tends to be tough when you cook it and you eat it. Okay, so with the fat, we have muscle fibers with the yellow represents fat globules in between the muscle fibers. Okay, so what happens is when you cook meat that has fat in it, before the meat fibers cook, the temperature will be high enough to melt the fat globules in between the muscle fibers. And so what happens is, as the fat melts, it releases the bonds between the tough fibrous muscle, and of course it's attached to the fat, but it's not attached to the next fiber right next to it. So then they break away. Okay, so that's why when you cook a piece of meat that has a lot of marbling in it, and then you cut into it, since the fibers are already broken, when you cut on it, it easily breaks away. Whereas a fiber that's a muscle without any fat, what happens is when it cooks, it tightens up and gets even tighter. Okay, so when you try to cut it, it's very difficult to cut through. Okay, that's why when you cook a steak, you notice it shrinks. Okay, the reason why it's shrinking is all these muscle fibers are tightening together, and it tightens up. Okay, whereas something with a lot of fat in it will shrink a little bit, but as it shrinks, it will squeeze out all the fat. Okay, and then when you cut into it, since the fibers are all broken apart, it cuts through softer. Okay, so what you want to do is, there's all kinds of different cuts, and the prices reflect all the different cuts. This is a chuck. It's one on the cheaper end of the scale, but within the chuck you'll find marbling. Okay, like for example, I could cut this right here. You see this, and it's the shape of a Spencer steak or even a ribeye. Okay, so this is like a poor man's ribeye or a poor man's sirloin with that shape. Okay, and if I leave the little tip over there, it's like almost like a top sirloin, right? I mean, not top sirloin, but sirloin from a T-bone. Okay, so there's also another part of the chuck that I don't have an example here. This is the tail end of it, where there's actually a poor man's tenderloin. They call it a poor man's tenderloin, and but a lot of times it's like this. It's very, very lean. So if you're looking for a very lean cut of tenderloin, but you don't want to spend $15 a pound or 20, because it's real expensive, then you look for a chuck, and you try to have them take the eye of the chuck out. Okay, but as you can see, there's another piece right here. You keep this little part and you cut right around here, and then you have like this sirloin shape. Okay, this one too. Okay, and I can tell you, this one, out of these two, this one be the most tender, because as you can see, it has a lot more marbling than this one. Okay, now you can't tell, but in actuality, this is the most tender, because even though there's tough striations of tough beef in there, the reason why this section is tender is because there's huge strands of muscle in this layer. And this part, if I was to cut this out and fry this up just by itself, you will find that these three sections will split apart because it's all fat in between here. You can see it better on this one here. You can see better on this one. There's a big streak of fat right there. So when I cook, if I was to cut this out and I cook this section right here, this would literally fall off. If I were to lift this off to the frying pan, this part would just fall off. Same with here. So as you can tell, anything with a lot of marbling will be tender. So when you look for your cuts of meat, no matter what cut you buy, you're gonna buy according to your budget. But once you decide on which cut you're gonna get, along in the store, look at all that cut. If you're getting a sirloin, fine. Look at all the sirloins and try to find the sirloin with the most marbling in it, because that's what you want. Okay, it's going to be the same price as the one that's real lean, and everybody's going to buy the one that's real lean. Okay, but the problem with that is it's going to be a tough steak. Okay, you don't want a tough steak, you want a tender steak. So for your best buy, find the one with the most marbling. Whatever you cut, you decide, whether it's a tenderloin, it's T-bone, it's a sirloin, even a top round, which can be, it's top round is like the most toughest steak, and it's usually ground up into hamburger. That's how tough it is. But even a top round, if served in a large restaurant, they call it steamship round or roast beef. It has a lot of marbling in it. Okay, so make sure, always look for marbling.